Huddle continues, our first official episode here on the Michigan Sports Radio. Nate Wangler with you today. Jackson Hayden will join us for episode number 2. Before we get into anything further, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has watched this show so far. We are nearing 4,000 followers on TikTok and growing. Again, we are your one-stop shop for everything Michigan high school football, and that continues here today. Our first official guest here on In the Huddle. We had Sean Judd, strength and conditioning coach from Fruitport in North Muskegon, join us in our preview episodes. But again, today is number 1 in a lot of ways. And we have a very special guest joining us on the show today, founder and owner of DeCamp Creative Solutions, specializing in photography, videography, and branding. But, you know, I was talking to him yesterday about nicknames. I'm like, you have to go by something. You only have 3 decades of experience in covering sports. So I need one thing I can call you. And the one thing that I settled on was the encyclopedia, because he is the encyclopedia. That's Scott DeCamp. What's up? Welcome on.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. Very, very, very detailed and very probably not deserved intro like that, but it means a lot to me. And, you know, you say encyclopedia, that means a lot to me because I'm not measuring myself against these guys. These guys are legends, but, you know, folks like Brett Bakita and Jason Hutton, you know, Book and Bakita, you know, they called, you know, Hutton, they call him the Book because he's got that just encyclopedia type memory and everything. And I kind of fancy myself after that, but I'm not sure I'm on that level, but thank you.
And make no mistake, those guys were inspirations and continue to be inspirations. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for guys like him and some of the other OGs, as the kids call them, in Grand Rapids sports media. But let's get into this a little bit. Before we get into actual high school football and what's going on with these teams, I wanted to introduce our audience to you. We talked about the 30 years of experience in covering sports media. I thought it was fascinating because we talked off screen coming into the interview about how you've been around and you've even done professional sports. You covered the Tigers during their World Series runs, which doesn't feel like that long ago, but it also feels like forever ago at the same time. But you said that high school is the one thing that kind of reinvigorates you. It's the one thing that you get the most out of. Tell me a little bit about yourself and really where this journey started for you.
Well, it does, you know, and the reason I feel that way about covering high school sports, you know, I've had the opportunities to cover professional and college and high school, and I say this all the time, 10 out of 10 times I'm going to choose high school just because it seems fresh, it seems innocent. I know things change and maybe not everything we see is always maybe quote innocent, but by and large, I mean, I think, you know, the audience, you know, the kids, obviously, they're first and foremost, you know, the kids playing the games, you know, they truly enjoy and appreciate the coverage and having you around. And there's so many, everyone's got a story to tell. But, you know, the reason I got into this is basically my roots. And I grew up in Ravenna. I think probably people around here know where that's at, but a small town between, you know, just east of Muskegon. I say between Muskegon and Grand Rapids. I guess I've claimed both of those communities. But yeah, I grew up there in a small town. And what else are you going to do in a small town besides farm, which I didn't grow up on a farm. But dad or grew up playing sports, and that's what we did. And had great experiences, you know, including with football. When Ravenna won 4 state titles, I was not on those teams, but around, you know, around those teams in one capacity or another. And, you know, baseball, basketball, all those things. There's just something about it, the connections you make, the memories you make, the relationships. To me, it's always about the relationships. And that's what I've tried to foster in my, you know, lengthy career here, is just build those relationships, and then everything else falls into place.
Well, the athletic tradition in Muskegon and Muskegon area is something that runs deep, and we've talked about this on this show before. Obviously, Ravenna is in that mix as well. I've gotten to visit a couple of other schools over that direction, but it is always one of the biggest conversations coming in is how do we sort out the Muskegon area? Before we get to that, though, we'll start out here, and then we'll kind of move our way in. I know Jason Hutton put out his top 10 in terms of West Michigan area schools going into the season. There were a few surprises on there, but I'm not going to have you list the top 10 per se, but is there a list, is there a collection of teams that you're really looking at and really impressed by going into the 26th season?
Yeah, and I'm calling it up now because I actually Don Patton, who does some sports coverage in the area, at least promotes the Grand Rapids landscape. He asked me to be a part of that polling group again. So along with Jason Hutton and those guys, I submitted a poll, and I did that this morning. And I can actually tell you once I call this up, what. Sorry, I should be more organized. I usually am organized, but I did send that out so I could tell you. But it's very similar to those guys. I wasn't trying to copy them, but it's always kind of hard to tell in the beginning. Um, Going into a year, you kind of have an idea of what to expect, what who has what returning, what's coming in, all these things, traditions and such. But my top 10 that I released was East Kentwood. We'll start from the top. Number
Mm.
one, East Kentwood. Number two, Mona Shores. Number three, Muskegon. Number four, Hudsonville. Number five, Kennewa Hills. Number six, Grand Rapids Catholic Central. Number seven, Grand Rapids West Catholic. Number eight, Rockford. Number nine, South Christian. And number 10, Unity. So very similar to some of these other guys that are going to be putting their polls out there. But, and you always feel like you're missing somebody. And usually week one, week two, it tells a lot as far as doesn't tell the whole story, but it kind of gives you an idea. Oh, yeah, if we forgot about this group, or maybe this team's not as good. But and some people might raise an eyebrow. Well, how do you have smaller schools like Grand Rapids Catholic and West Catholic ahead of like a Rockford? Well, I mean that's what's fun about these polls is you never know. I mean those two teams, those aren't your typical Division Five schools either. Grand
Yeah.
Rapids Catholic and West Catholic, they're typically punching way above their weight class. So, but that's how I came out in the initial top 10 poll.
Some of the things that we do every day, we help you get your wisdom teeth out before they're hurting you or when they're hurting you.
I was a little anxious about needing my wisdom teeth out, going under anesthesia, and then recovery process. It's a scary thing. The Center for Oral Surgery earned my trust by explaining everything in detail and answer all the questions that I had.
You know what? And we're a show of bold takes. I don't want to be hot take guy. There's no room for that in my mind, but bold takes, strong takes are great things. Now, you're the one with far more experience than I have when it comes to covering sports on the west side of the state. However, I think if I were to just throw out there to a group of people, Kennewa Hills on my list is ranked ahead of Grand Rapids Catholic Central. I think a lot of people would go, in what world is that the case? But you look at what Kennewa has coming into this year and you go, maybe there's something there. Now, DeWitt's a hard test to start with, but why is it that you have Kennewa ahead of Catholic Central?
Well, I have them ahead of them for the very reasons that you kind of stated, and this kind of dovetails nicely into my involvement with Michigan Sports Radio this season. I've been brought in to write some feature stories. I'll do a couple a week, and coincidentally, Kennewa Hills was the place I visited a couple weeks ago. Visited a practice, and obviously London Hampton, U of M commit,
Mhm.
just dynamite player. We're going to be turning around something on him, and then they've got two other Division One or two commits, and you got Will Fussman, the receiver committed to Central Michigan. You've got Grayson Fellows, the quarterback committed to Michigan Tech. Sounds like Western Michigan is still somewhat involved there, but he's committed to Michigan Tech right now. And then they have their leader on the defense coming back is Xander Yost, undersized dude. If he was 6'2", 6'3", you'd probably be talking about him as another one of those kids who's a D1, D2 kid. But he nearly set a school record last year in tackles. He's a returning linebacker. I know Hope College has offered a roster spot to him, and again, just because he's 5'8", 5'9", whatever he is. But those are the four leaders, so we'll have something on them on those four kids as well. But um, they're loaded. They returned 18 starters from last year. They were 8-2. It finished in a disappointing fashion, in that playoff loss against a team that they handled earlier in the season. But playoffs are a different animal. But it just seemed like Kennewa Hills is just slowly making that climb. Plus, not that this matters, when you're asking about comparing them to Grand Rapids Catholic, Kennewa Hills is Division IV this year, so they really
Mhm.
feel like they got a shot to be one of those teams to make some major noise. The goal there is for them is to win a state title in Division IV, and I mean, we'll see what happens, but
Yeah.
they've got a lot of pieces back, and Don Fellows has been around. He knows how to build state championship quality teams.
And when you establish culture at the high school level, you know this as well as anybody else. that produces wins. You know, even people said about like DeWitt, well, they have a lot of turnover from last year. They lost X amount of seniors. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, okay, but it matters less when you have all of those other pieces in places that make you a winning program. So when I look at Kennewa Hills, they have those things, right? So I agree. I think they're going to be very good this year, but I almost called them a dark horse because again, it is kind of one. Sometimes when you look at things historically, people go, well, wait a minute. But I think you make a lot of really good points there. Before we get to Muskegon area, because I am interested to hear what you think about the teams in that area, East Kentwood has been like a unanimous number one for a lot of people. And I think for a bevy of reasons, I think the culture has changed. But more than that, they're defensively there's some monsters on that team. They are built to win. And again, defense wins championships the way that we always say. What is it that impresses you and maybe impresses everybody else about what EK presents coming into this year?
Well, I think that's a lot of it. And I think Tyrone Spencer coming from Detroit King, having such a great run there, Detroit King there with state titles and such and coaching some just flat out dudes there. Came over here. He's trying to rebuild East Kentwood. East Kentwood, I've considered them a sleeping giant for a long time. They got it's a monster of a school. I mean, you've seen the indoor facility. I'm not sure if that's completed yet or how far along they are with that. They're building that beautiful indoor facility. They've just always had pumped out Division I kids too. They've had the talent there. That hasn't been the question. It's just finding someone to kind of bring it all together. And I think slowly we're working our way toward that. I mean, they took out Hudsonville last year at Hudsonville in the playoffs and ran into a very tough. I think they're the ones that played Detroit Catholic Central. I mean, I saw Catholic Central, Detroit Catholic Central, and Cass Tech in the finals last year. I was covering that game and doing some work down there for MHSAA, and that was almost like a different sport, man. That felt like a Division I football game, like not Division I high school, which it was, Division I college, big time game with all the dudes running around out there. But back to Kentwood, I mean, I think Coach Spencer's really got it rolling in the right direction. And yes, they have a couple of pieces to replace, including at the quarterback spot, but they're never short on talent on those dudes out there. And I just think that, the OK Red, that's a gauntlet of a league. It's just week after week after week.
Yeah, and even if you get out of the red and let's say you get to the state championship or somewhere close, then you have to play someone like a Castech, and hey, congrats, they have 16 Division I prospects playing for them. So again, like you talked about, it almost felt like a game you would see in the Mid-American Conference. I think they should compete in there some days. But anyways, maybe this is the year that a Division I program finally breaks through and brings one home. I was with Caledonia when they went and they played a sophomore Bryce Underwood in the state championship game. They put up a good fight, but it's been tough for a lot of Division I schools, no doubt about that. One more quick one before we get to our Muskegon area. South Christian in the top 10. Now, they had a lot of close losses last year. As a team that they struggled to finish games out. What really stands out about South?
I just think, without knowing the roster in depth yet, I just think, again, it's culture. Coach Brown over there has done a great job. A few years ago, because in the area I live, we covered like Whitehall. Whitehall had a really good squad for a couple years there. And they ran into South Christian. They played a regional final over at Kentwood. Freezing cold. It must have been like 30 degrees, 25 degrees, but phenomenal game. But it's just, they just reload. They don't rebuild over at South Christian. They reload. And like you said, even though maybe it didn't meet their quote standards last year, they were still in most games. And they're always a team, with that, with Coach Brown and his coaching staff and their culture, that's going to be right there knocking on the door. And there's a lot of people talking pretty highly that I've read around the West Michigan areas about South Christian. And you just got to kind of, you don't want to overlook them ever because they've obviously earned the reputation and, that they have, and they're just a disciplined group. And they've always got athletes. They've always got these rangy kids, 6'2" to 6'5", just long levers, kids that can run around, make plays. And, when Whitehall played them a few years ago, they had like 6'5" defensive ends, 6'4" linebackers. Whitehall just couldn't get up into them because they were so long. They just put their arms out and you just couldn't really block them and get into them because of those big frames. But again, that's another team I know that people are really excited to see this year, South Christian.
I know I went to high school a decade ago, but I talked the other day about Orchard Lake St. Mary's and the great time we had playing that team. That's sarcastic, by the way. I hated playing Orchard Lake. They had Allen Robinson and those guys playing for him at that time. Terrible. But South Christian was another good example, right? Tall, athletic, good length, and good spots. They're always going to be a stingy team, a tough team to play, no doubt about it. Muskegon area. No real fluff around this question. I'm just genuinely curious what you think, because I think it's an electric matchup. Muskegon and Granville to kick off the season. Obviously, they played to open last year. A lot to like about both sides. I think Granville's one of those programs that does consistently win, but just can't get over the hump. And obviously, we know the prowess of Muskegon. What do you see in that matchup?
Well, if you're looking at it from a Muskegon standpoint, Granville, what you're going to get pretty much. I mean, they do what they do. They do it well, big and strong up front. In the T offense, and they execute extremely well, and they've had some studs come through there, including Mr. Terry that just played for them, had a heck of a career for them. Muskegon, though, I was at a media day at an MLive Media Day, helping out the local sports journal, doing some photography and some interviews and stuff, and Muskegon brought in, I don't know, 15, 20 kids or whatever, and they were just monsters. Like I asked Coach Fairfield, I go, are these the guys that are off the bus first, when you go to a game? Just because they're so imposing. And the biggest and baddest of them all is Ricardo Kitchen. He's a U of M commit, 6'6", 260. He'll be a 4-year starter on the edge for them. His counterpart on the other edge is, his name is, let me find his name here on the roster. It is, just because not off the top of my head, Cameron Sims. He's about 6'2", 225, but another just specimen of a kid. They have a Ferris commit, which, Ferris is just an animal in Division II and does it as well as anybody in college football, pound for pound. But they just have just some massive kids. And again, Muskegon, not the same as Granville by any means, but they do what they do. They run the veer, and that's just their style, but on their defense is where they're really going to hang their hat this year, because they return 6 or 7 starters on that side of the ball. And I mean, if a team can't score and having trouble moving the ball, I mean, you're going to put yourself in position to win a lot of games. But they certainly look the part. They're going to find out right away, because they host Granville in week 2 and travel to Rockford. Host Granville week 1, travel to Rockford in week 2. And by the way, they play Clarkston as well this year too, and that's just part of their non-league. On top of playing Mona Shores, Byron Center, so they're going to be battle tested too. And Shane Fairfield's been there, done that. He's the all-time winningest coach in Muskegon high school history, and they just do what they do, and they certainly have the athletes to back it up and be a dangerous opponent for anybody.
Are you having a hard time hearing tonight's game? Hi, I'm Brock Conkle from Michigan Sports Radio, and after putting it off for many years, I decided to contact Miracle Ear and get my hearing tested, and sure enough, had significant hearing loss. The friendly staff at Miracle Ear fitted me with hearing aids, and life is so much more enjoyable being able to hear the things that I've been missing. Go to miracle-ear.com to schedule your free hearing evaluation. There's a location near you.
Yeah, that is a gauntlet. I think that is an understatement. What I will say, though, to your point, in being around in the OK Red for the last handful of years, if you match Granville's physicality at the point of attack, that's probably your best chance of winning that game. Again, if you can find a way to shut down that full house T, that will set up everything else that you need to do. But obviously, Muskegon, with their reputation, that is a really, really tough schedule, but they're built for it. It might be one of those years too, if they get, maybe 5 wins, even 4 wins, there might be something there to put them into the playoffs. Looking outside of Muskegon itself, anybody else, and I know it's hard because you can go by division. I know North Muskegon's been very good. Mona Shores has had their years. Who else really impresses you in the Muskegon area?
Well, we'll start off again. You just mentioned it, but Mona Shores. I think when you're looking at Muskegon area, basically every year, but especially this year, I think you got to look at Muskegon and Mona Shores. And like I said in the poll that I released for the West Michigan area, Grand Rapids and Muskegon, I had Mona Shores 2. Muskegon 3, you could easily flip those guys, but Mona Shores, they've had it going on. They won back-to-back state titles in 2019 and 2020. And they've kind of emerged as one of those teams. They don't have that tradition like Muskegon does going way back. Theirs is more recent, but they flat out have their system that they execute very well. Again, kind of a beer type offense, but and they also have their largest roster they've had in Matt Koziak's tenure there, which is I think 46 kids, which may not seem a lot, especially for a Division II school, but years that they've won state titles, they've had mid to high 30s on their roster. And, you know, for them, the quarterback generally is the straw that stirs the drink. And this year, don't want to put this kind of pressure on a kid because the kid I'm about to mention was very special, but Brady Rose was just a master at. He's just a phenomenal football player, master running that offense, but just so everything he did was just naturally. He's just always in the right place at the right time. For being such an undersized dude, I think the guy has 2 high school state titles and 3 national championships with Ferris, in his high school and college career combined. Well, there's a young man, a junior there named Owen Terpstra, who's kind of built like a Brady Rose. And again, don't want to put that kind of pressure on him, but I've seen the kid compete in football, but also in other sports. And he's, those are big shoes to kind of fill and to kind of put him in those shoes. But the kid just makes plays. He's just a gamer, and they're really excited about him. Another guy that you need to keep an eye on is running back Kevin White, 6'1", 205. He's a true home run threat for them, which they haven't had in a few years. The guy who can just take it the distance. They did have Tamarian Stewart last year, but he was just loaded at about 220, 230 pounds at running back for them last year. He's at Miami of Ohio now. But Kevin White, keep an eye on him as well. And then they also got 3 brothers that moved in from Ludington to Mona Shores, the Himes brothers. And they're very, very athletic, big-time playmakers. So, they've certainly got several other pieces beyond those guys that I mentioned. Up front, you've got Keyshawn Collins, who I believe just committed to Grand Valley, if I remember correctly. And then, they've got some other dudes running around out there that are just playmakers at linebacker. Andrew Fisher, he's the returning middle linebacker for them. So they too returned quite a bit from last year, and they were just for them 5-5 last year, which is a disappointment, but lost some close games. And but I think Koziak really likes this roster makeup, and that's a team to look out for. And then you mentioned North Muskegon. They've lost some kids the last 2 graduating classes, but they got Cullen Bartos, who's a senior now, who would be a potential 3-year All-Stater. He's committed to Northwood. He's actually the cousin of Grayson Fellows at Kennewaw Hills. Just a little tidbit there. But start with him. He makes plays all over the field. They're going to be a tough out again in Division 7. But those are kind of the 3 teams right now that you got to kind of really look at in the Muskegon area. And I'm sure others will emerge, but you start with those 3 right now.
Hope has a pulse, and it beats in you. This is Versity. Hope, it's in our blood.
And as we, we'll zoom out one more time. I know we got about 10 minutes left, just under 10 minutes here. If you zoom out, let's just go all OK conferences. Is there a team or a cluster of teams that you're looking at that you go, this year, they're going to be a surprise? The one that, and I'll give you this one, that I think will surprise a lot of people is Grand Rapids Christian. Obviously historically have been very good. When I was in high school, they were winning state championships and going to state championships. There's been a little bit of a lull lately, but I think of Caleb Pugh, who obviously just committed to Indiana. That's a massive commitment for that kid. The reigning national champions. And obviously we know they can develop offensive linemen there. They had a very good offensive line last year, but there's some other really big pieces there. It just seems like they have the size and physicality at the point of attack to control games, which means I think they can go out and win a few. And obviously having someone like that really helps your cause. I'm remiss for not knowing some of the other names off the top of my head, but who could be a dark horse for you in 2026?
There's a few teams, and again, without completely knowing the rosters and seeing them yet, you think it seems like, and I don't know if you really call them a dark horse, because traditionally they've been almost as good as it gets. But Lowell, you wonder what's Lowell got cooking over there. It's a team you don't want to overlook. East Grand Rapids, is it Adloff? Is that his name? The MSU commit, the big lineman that's committed, I believe. I'm not sure if that's his last name, but And then Coopersville's the team that knocked out Kanawha. Those are three teams right away that I'm wondering. Coopersville has a kid who started at quarterback as a freshman. He's back. Coach Kamen's he's done a great job there, kind of not only maintaining what they had there, but trying to slowly build that even into an even greater power. So those are kind of the three that I'm really, really kind of keeping an eye on. But I hear good things about Zeeland West as well. People are speaking highly, said that offense looks really good again, even though Coach Shillitoe's not with them anymore, but it sounds like his fingerprints are still there. So, so again, maybe I'm giving you too many schools, and maybe it's a cop out. So I figured maybe if one of them hits, I'll look like a genius, right? So
yep, there you go. I mean, hey, that's kind of my goal here too. Yeah, I talk about all the different teams. One of them has to hit. Scott, thank you so much for dropping by. I did want to ask this one last question here before we send you off, because obviously I love talking about these specifics, and you gave us a lot of really good information. So we're going to be bringing you on as we go throughout the course of this year, talking about the top storylines in West Michigan area high school football. But I am curious because we've seen college football change in so many different ways. Recently we just saw the LSU lineman that was with an NFL team, didn't make it, comes back to college. So much of that has changed. What has changed in your mind? What has been the biggest change over the 30 years you've been covering Michigan high school football? And I know this is really putting you on the spot, but what's been the biggest evolution in the game at this level?
I just think this is very general, but I've had this discussion with a lot of coaches and educators, because I've done some work with schools too, not just sports coverage, but doing promotion and basically highlighting schools and the kids and the great things going on there. The $1 million question that comes up: have kids changed over the years, or has the world around them changed? I just think the world around these children, these kids, these teenagers has changed. I mean, I think it's up to the adults in the room to kind of establish those boundaries. I think at the end of the day, kids want structure and discipline. They may not say it, they may not always act it, but I think that's what they're looking for. So what's changed is it's just a wild world out there. Like you talk about the LSU lineman who didn't make it maybe in the NFL and wants to come back. I mean, it's really, to me, it's kind of an issue in college basketball, college football. I think there need to be guardrails established. I mean, I'm all for NIL. I think that's a long time coming. I think these young people should get what should be coming to them, what they've earned with their name, image, and likeness. I think the transferring is fine, but there are no guardrails. It's just the Wild West, and no one knows what's really going on these days. I mean, I guess I'm more of a traditionalist, like a college sports fan, that you got to know the roster, you got to know the school, whatever school you support or you cheer for. But now that's really hard to do unless you're really on top of it, because things are moving all over the place. I mean, some of these kids are getting paid more than the coaches in some spots, and I just think what's changed is just the world around these young people. And I mean, if I was a kid growing up, I mean, recruiting opportunities are tough for kids now out of high school, just because of the transfer portal. I mean, they're not getting recruited like they used to, and if they are, they're dropping a level or two. Maybe if you think you're a Division I kid, well, Division I programs, a lot of them are hitting the portal before they ever start looking at recruiting, because they're trying to win now, because there's a pressure to win now. So in a roundabout answer, I think it's just the world around these young people has changed, and it's going to keep changing. And but there needs to be some kind of guidelines or guardrails set up. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to not recognize these sports, pretty soon, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's NIL opportunities for high schoolers now. And so I agree with you. I think, setting those things in place so that they don't kind of get, I guess, lost in the sauce some way, that we can guide them in making these decisions. Because you're right, I don't think the world's going to stop changing, but how do we make sure that they are equipped with what they need to be able to successfully navigate it? These are really good conversations, by the way. We definitely have to have more of these. But for now, again, previewing everything that's going on in week 1 coming up tomorrow. Starting this one will air Wednesday, first games on Thursday. It's going to be a fun season, no doubt. Scott, appreciate you coming by here today and looking forward to everything this fall.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nate. Look forward to future conversations too.
Yes, sir. As always, we'll be right back. This is In the Huddle, again, episode 1 on Michigan Sports Radio.